policy of foreign adventurism would, in the nature of things, bend and twist and ultimately shatter our original system. As foreign affairs became more important, power would shift from communities and states to the federal government, and within that, from Congress to the president. An ever-busy foreign policy could only be carried out by the president, often without the knowledge of the people, often without the knowledge of Congress. Thus, the American system based on local government, states' rights, the Congress, and the voice of the people would more and more give way to a bloated bureaucracy headed by an imperial president. But now, as Sumner said, with the war against Spain and the philosophy behind it, we are letting ourselves in for the old European system. War, debt, taxation, as he said, diplomacy, a grand governmental system, pomp, glory, a big army, navy, lavish expenditures, and political jobbery, in a word, imperialism. In giving up our own system, there would be, Sumner admitted, compensations. Immortal glory is not nothing, as the Spaniards well knew. To be part, even a pawn, in a mighty enterprise of armies and navies, to identify with great imperial power projected around the world. The first empire of which it said that the sun never set was the Spanish Empire. To see the flag raised on victorious battlefields. Many peoples in history thought that game was well worth the candle. Only it was not the American way. Pardon me. That had been more modest, more prosaic, parochial, more middle class. It was based on the idea that we are here to live out our lives, minding our own business and pursuing our happiness in our work, our families, churches, communities. It had been the small policy. Finally, the final point I want to make. Finally, focusing on foreign problems, another point in the prima facie case against foreign entanglements. Focusing on foreign problems diverts our attention from the need for very far-reaching reforms at home. Those imperative reforms go far beyond anything suggested, sincerely or not, by our political leaders or anybody, virtually anybody who writes. We will never be able to undertake them if at any moment the politicians can choose to distract our attention by concocting some foreign crisis or other. Do we have problems at home that call for our attention? I think so. We have to abolish the Federal Reserve System. How's that for starters? Leave aside the Fed's past depredations. The government, according to studies, now has an unfunded commitment of $50 trillion. How is this huge sum going to be met? How's the government going to meet its obligations? The Fed would have to manage a massive inflation in the years to come, the total destruction of the dollar. It's the only way they can do it. There are our continuing budget deficits, the national debt, and then the phony baloney tax cuts will have to be paid by more taxes in the future by your children and grandchildren. Rapidly approaching crises in Social Security and Medicaid, which a conservative administration added huge new entitlement to the prescription drugs, about which the cost of which it deliberately lied to Congress. There's a rotten American educational system. Year after year, producing millions of functional illiterates and near illiterates, and amazingly uninformed young people. There are hundreds of examples, but this is one I came across recently that I like. Half of American high school seniors think that Sodom and Gomorrah were a married couple in the Bible. These are the future Democratic voters in our American empire. There's our ongoing struggle to stop the steady erosion of our Second Amendment rights by ignorant media types and the national and international bureaucrats who have this strange vendetta against guns that private people use for recreation, to protect themselves, their families, and their stores. I favor keeping guns in the hands of private people rather than in the hands of those who use them to kill foreigners. Is there any question that the war on drugs is a national disaster? And this is not a passing interlude like Prohibition was. Now there are hundreds of thousands of federal and state and local bureaucrats with a personal interest perpetuating the so-called war, and United Nations and foreign bureaucrats with the same interest. Getting rid of this war will itself be a full-time job. Other enforcement agencies are out of control, as well as the Drug Enforcement Agency. Well, Jim Bovard detailed some of that. We could take the FBI. Where's the anthrax killer after all these years? We've forgotten about the anthrax killer. Instead, the FBI harasses innocent people like Brandon Mayfield. He's an attorney in Portland, Oregon. There was a terror attack in Madrid. The Spanish police faxed some fingerprints that they found there to the FBI. The FBI concluded that the fingerprints belonged to this Mayfield guy. They jailed him for weeks. In fact, they said that prints matched 100%, although the Madrid police had said, no, there's no match. Finally, the FBI had to admit they were mistaken, apologize to Mayfield and his family. Now they can't even do fingerprints. And let's not forget they're the heroes of Waco and Ruby Ridge. Huh? Okay, well, there is a logic in human affairs, and one could go on with the other things that have to be done. There's a logic in human affairs, Sumner said, to go back to him for a moment. Once you make certain decisions, some paths that were open to you before are closed, and you are led step by step in a certain direction. America was choosing the path of world power, and Sumner had very little hope that his words would change that. So why was he speaking out? Simply because, as he said, the scheme of a republic which our fathers formed was a glorious dream which demands more than a word of respect and affection before it passes away. It's a very pessimistic conclusion, a bit more optimistic. But to recover the republic, to forswear the empire, will require a colossal effort. This conference is a small step in the right direction. Thank you.